2019 State Board of Education meeting. I'm Eric Davis, Chair of the Board, and I call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome all board members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, online listeners, and Twitter followers. And in particular, I'd like to welcome two of our superintendents, Superintendent Will Hoffman of Madison County, who's representing the Western RESA, and Superintendent Steve Bassnight from Hyde County. If you please stand, we'd like to welcome you particularly. Thanks for joining us. I remind the audience and those listening that this body meets monthly with its official meeting scheduled for the first Thursday of the month. Committee meetings are held on Wednesday prior to the official meeting day, as was the case yesterday when the board met to discuss its committee agenda items. And I remind our on-site visitors and online listeners that you can follow our meeting online and see all of our materials by going to the SBE Meetings tab at www.ncpublicschools.org. Our October agenda was approved yesterday, so we'll proceed under that approved agenda. In addition, yesterday was National Custodian Day, and for anyone who's ever stepped in one of our public schools, you know the critical role that custodians play in the education of our students. Far beyond just keeping our facilities clean, presentable, and safe, custodians are often the friendliest face our students see when they arrive in the morning and are a constant support to our teachers. So we want to thank every one of our custodians across all of our public schools in North Carolina for the service they bring to our students. Board members, you're reminded that it's our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this board. Does any member of the board know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. And if during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. At this time, I'd ask you to please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We now come to our special recognitions, a time on our agenda when we recognize significant awards, proclamations, resolutions, and those who make a difference in the lives of our public school students each day. Today we have the honor of recognizing North Carolina recipients of the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science teacher may receive for outstanding teaching in the United States. The awards were established by Congress in 1983. The President may recognize up to 108 exemplary teachers each year. And now I'm delighted to call on Mr. Joseph Reaper to announce our exemplary teachers.
Good morning. Superintendent Johnson, Chairman Davis, Vice Chairman Duncan, State Board of Education members, and honored guests. My name is Joe Reaper, and as the State Coordinator for the Presidential Awards, it gives me great pleasure to talk to you about this recognition program and to present the 2019 North Carolina finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. The Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, also shorthand we call PAMST, is the highest recognition that teachers in science, technology, engineering, math, and computer science may receive for outstanding teaching in the United States. Enacted by Congress in 1983, this program authorizes the President to bestow up to 108 awards each year. The National Science Foundation administers this program on behalf of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Up to 2 awardees will be announced for each of the 50 states and 4 U.S. jurisdictions, including the U.S. territories and the Department of Defense Education Activity Schools. To earn this recognition, the finalists completed an application that consisted of a written narrative concerning their teaching practices, letters of recommendation, supplemental material to support their demonstration of success, and a 30-minute unedited video of their classroom. A selection committee then rated each application based on the teacher's mastery of content, anticipation and planning for misconceptions, purposeful use of instructional methods, support of the needs of all students, effective use of assessments to improve student learning, reflective practice to improve teaching and learning, strategies that are supportive and inclusive of students from diverse backgrounds, and leadership outside of the classroom. For 2019, the Presidential Awards focused on teachers from the STEM fields in grades 7 through 12. We are here today to honor the 6 finalists from North Carolina. These teachers are recognized for their skills as educators with focus on growing students and developing a passion for the STEM fields. In addition to honoring individual achievement, the goal of this award program is to exemplify the highest standards of teaching. Our finalists serve as models for their colleagues, inspiration for their communities, and leaders in the improvement of STEM education. These teachers are leaders not only in the classroom, but in their school, district, state, and across the nation. The 2019 finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching are from the Southwest District, Tyler Erb. Tyler teaches at the Community House Middle School in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. His application focus was on transforming a variety of functions by manipulating variables.
All right. Let's see, this would be James. I guess we got everybody.
There we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
From the North Central District, Cheryl Gann of the North Carolina School for Science and Mathematics. Her application focus was constructing a sequence of logical arguments in graph theory. From the Western District, Adria Hardy from Brevard Senior High School in Transylvania County Schools. Her application focus was analyzing bivariate data to understand the relationships between variables. In the area of science, from the Western District, Jill Francis from Chase High School. Jill is from Chase High School from Rutherford County Schools, and her application focus was the exploration of cellular respiration in plants and animals.
And 1, 2, 3, and one more. 1, 2, 3.
From the North Central District, Robert Gottwiles from the North Carolina School for Science and Mathematics. Robert's lesson focus was using research-grade visualization tools to study large data sets.
And 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, guys.
From the North Central District, Danielle McClassen from Mills Park Middle School. Of course, Mills Park Middle School is in Wake County Public School System, and her application focus was an exploration of how the flow of energy is connected to the nitrogen and carbon cycles.
One, two, three. One more. One, two, three.
You can come to my room, I'll teach you.
Okay, good.
The national awardees are announced at the timing and at the behest of the White House. The difficulty of creating such a schedule sometimes means that the announcement of the national awardees is delayed. Of the 6 teachers honored here today as finalists, up to 2 of them will be announced as the presidential awardees, typically 1 in mathematics and 1 in science. These presidential awardees will receive a citation signed by the President of the United States, a trip to Washington, D.C. to attend a series of recognition events and professional development opportunities, and, just minorly speaking here, a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation. The finalist recognition will continue at a luncheon this afternoon here at DPI, where they receive further recognition from the Association of State Supervisors of Mathematics, the Council of State Science Supervisors, and the National Science Foundation. The finalists will also be recognized by the North Carolina Council for Teachers of Mathematics and the North Carolina Science Teachers Association at their annual conferences in November. The 2020 Presidential Award Cycle will begin within a few weeks, and the focus will be on kindergarten to 6th grade teachers in the STEM teaching fields in both public and private schools. Anyone, including parents and state board members, can nominate an outstanding teacher for the presidential awards by going to www.paimst.org. Thank you for taking time to recognizing and honoring some of North Carolina's best science, technology, engineering, and mathematics teachers.
We're delighted to honor these teachers and grateful for every science and math teacher in our public school system. Thanks for what you do. All right, today we have the opportunity to return to some work helping our students and teachers respond to natural disasters. And we're pleased to have with us former Superintendent Dr. Mike Ward to present us with the work and a report from the FAST NC Steering Committee. Given that the board has approved the use of North Carolina Education Fund and the established FAST NC process to respond to Hurricane Dorian needs, I'd like to suggest without objection one last call to respond to Hurricane Florence needs from our public schools. But this time I'll pause and turn to Dr. Ward.
We're back. Sadly enough, that may be the case for a while to come. It's very, very good to see you all again, but sorry about the circumstances. We find ourselves again bemoaning a natural disaster that's caused a lot of harm and a lot of sadness for our friends in the eastern part of the state. So just a recap of what brought us all together in the first place. Some of the folks who are here this morning may not know the history of FAST NC, and we're at a one-year juncture from the creation of FAST NC. So just a quick recap of what brought us together. Right after Hurricane Florence last year, State Superintendent Johnson, former State Superintendent June Atkinson, myself, former State Board Chair Phil Kirk, current State Board Chair Eric Davis, former Mississippi State Superintendent, and former Assistant U.S. Secretary of Education during the Katrina recovery years, Henry Johnson, formed FAST NC. We grouped together to form a bipartisan team, very intentionally bipartisan, with 2 things in mind. First and foremost, we wanted to be of use to teachers and students who've been harmed by the storm. But secondly, we also wanted to send a signal. We live in times which offer up so much to divide us. We wanted to send a really clear signal that we could reach across party lines and across issues that divide us to do something worthwhile. So we established FAST NC. You all were good enough to anoint that proposal and to make available the North Carolina Education Fund as a repository for FAST NC donations. The General Assembly stepped up, made $350,000 available to the project. We received over $90,000 in donations from individuals. And thanks to State Superintendent Johnson and his colleagues, we also received some wonderful corporate gifts as well. You'll hear a little more about those in just a moment. The idea was to make these funds available to teachers and other educators in the areas where the storm had caused the greatest damage.
Good morning to all of you. The purpose of FAST NC is to provide funds and in-kind contributions to assist public school students and employees in recovering from the devastation of a storm such as we have had in the past. Priority is given to school materials, supplies, and resources that aid students in being prepared for instruction and to aid educators in the restoration of a high-quality learning environment. FAST NC funds are not intended to address needs that are covered by insurance or county, state, and federal governments. The State Board of Education approved the North Carolina Education Fund to receive individual donations, and the Board of the Communities and Schools stepped up to receive donations from corporations and vendors. The FAST NC Steering Committee processes all the applications for relief funds. We have a conference call every Tuesday. We recommend approval or disapproval, and depending on which organization an application is routed to, the State Board of Education or the Board of the Communities and Schools acts on the recommendation. The application process is simple, it's straightforward, and the vast majority of the applications are approved. And with the support of the legislators, individual donors, and corporate donors like Google and PNC Bank, we put together over $1 million. And by the end of the 18-19 school year, you had approved, and Communities and Schools Board had approved over 100 grants totaling over $900,000. And these grants have helped to replace items for teaching and learning that were lost or damaged during the storm.
You're on my left, you remember that? Well, and I'm right in the middle where I usually am. Good morning. This was truly a team effort. We had more than 40 organizations that worked with us on this campaign, I'll call it. We don't have time to mention every act of kindness this morning, but I want to highlight just a few. United Methodist in Eastern North Carolina, led by Bishop Hope Ward, partnered with us and collected an additional $75,000. Charlotte Rotary, thanks to Chairman Eric Davis, donated $6,000. And there were many donations of materials and supplies. And thanks to Superintendent Johnson's contact, First Book donated thousands of books to the cause. Save the Children did likewise. NC Mass donated over 2,160 scientific calculators. Thanks to the leadership provided by Superintendent Atkinson and State Textbook Warehouse Section Chief Drew Fairchild, we were able to distribute thousands of books and packages of school supplies. And also during this time when the fires were raging in California, I heard from a couple that I had met previously, and in California, several book clubs got together and sent, I think, over 100 books to us. So, and there are many more stories, but it won't take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to call Pam Hartley up for some comments. She's been a great partner with Communities and Schools North Carolina, and they helped us. We got some very large corporate donations, and we really appreciate them helping us get those out through this system as well.
So Pam Hartley and lead Communities and Schools of North Carolina, and really I just wanted to thank NC or Fast NC and the State Board for calling on us, and to thank Tides Foundation and Google and PNC Bank for coming to our teachers and students aid. You know that Communities and Schools is here to surround our students with a community of support, and we do that by leveraging the public and private sectors to come together. And it's just been fantastic to get to do that, not just for our students, but for our school districts. So we just thank you for asking us. We quickly said yes. We will say yes again, and you can count on us to support efforts like this into the future. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all so much for stepping up for this. What's next? We still have funds available for Hurricane Florence victims. So we're going to put out one last call for one last round of applications for any teacher, any school that has been affected by Hurricane Florence and still has needs. We want to get this money out to them. So we're looking, that will probably be available and open on October 18th. And then we'll do one last round for Florence. And after we look at those, we're also going to open this up for victims from Hurricane Dorian. We're going to hear about Dorian right after this. And fortunately, it was not as impactful to all of North Carolina as Florence, but we're going to hear the people it did impact, it walloped. So we're going to be standing ready with this fund to help those students and teachers as well. So thank you all to the steering committee for all of us coming together, bipartisan for a nonpartisan issue, to get money out to students and teachers. Thank y'all.
Sure thing. Well, we really are grateful to you all for entrusting this work to us. Thank you for letting us partner with you. We're grateful to you. Hope and I are headed to Ocracoke tomorrow to visit the school and the Methodist church there and to see the damage there. Just one closing thought. Months ago, I shared with you information about our trip to Magnolia Elementary School in Robeson County. And I wanted to recount what a teacher said that day, because it seems a good way to put a capstone on the conversation we've had so far. This was the classroom of Crystal McDonald at Magnolia Elementary School in Robeson County. And when she talked about what her kids had been through in Hurricane Florence, she said, these kids have lost so much. Many of them don't have a thing that they can bring with them to school. Our message to them is simple. You just show up. We'll take care of the rest. And her Fast NC has been about the business of helping her make good on that promise and helping her colleagues in storm-affected areas to make good on that promise. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve.
Well, Dr. Ward, thank you for your leadership on this, and we'd like to, in a small way, express our appreciation to you and Dr. Atkinson and Mr. Kirk, if you could come forward.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Brent.
Good to see you.
Every morning.
Every morning. Could the full board
Let me get 2 rows. Can I get 2 rows? Yeah, 2 rows.
You always get on the front row.
Have everybody squeeze in. Okay.
Even when I go to middle school. Got to stay with the students.
Yep, perfect. Yep.
We'll go to the next one.
And 1, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, and 3.
That smile, right? Have some fun. Santa Claus. No, I mean, it took Santa Claus to the school. It took Santa Claus to the school in Wilmington to give out books to students who were affected in the storm.
Formation is so easy.
These days, so we're doing it again. In December, we're going around the state. We're getting, so you'll get to. Yeah, it'll be fun. Glad to have you back.
That's how,
Yeah, I liked it.
And to conclude this item on our response to Hurricane Dorian, I also want to extend a special appreciation to the NCAT Board of Directors and its Executive Director, Mr. Brock Womble. They responded to the facility needs of our Ocracoke students and ensured that the students and educators had a place to go to continue their education as their facility is repaired from Hurricane Dorian. This time, I'll turn to the superintendent for his report.
Thank you, and I do want to open this up to focus on Hurricane Dorian and its impact. We're going to start with our very own Eileen Townsend. Thank you for being here. She's going to give us an overview of the information we have so far on the broad impact of Hurricane Dorian. And then we have a very special guest who I'm going to turn over the whole report to after Eileen. Thank you, Eileen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's nice to be here again to brief you on yet another hurricane. So Hurricane Dorian hit about a month ago. As you know, it impacted our counties in North Carolina. To date, we have had a total of 7 LEAs that have reported damage to us, 1 community college. The most part of the damages are resulting in debris, a lot of flying debris, obviously from the wind, and our schools have all been in touch. We've told them, to fix it, get it repaired, send us the bills, and they're well on their way to doing all of those things. And we're, of course, ready to make payment to them in terms of a claims payment. We've had 2 counties that have been impacted significantly, one being Dare County. And I'm happy to say in Dare County, we were able to get there fairly quickly, a couple of days after we could get in. We met with the superintendent, we met with the facilities director, and while they did have a lot of debris and wind damage, I'm here to tell you the Cape Hatteras Secondary School was completely surrounded by floodwaters. Their facilities director, Mr. Garganis, kudos, hats off to him and his staff. I am here to tell you, he did the most amazing job. They literally wrapped the school in plastic, and then they sandbagged around it. I have photographs where the water has got to be at least 4 feet. It looked like a wrapped package in the middle of the ocean with all the water surrounding it. I am here to tell you, we had no flood damage. I do not know how they did it, but we're talking about it in the office. We're still in awe about it. Like, who could believe they did such an amazing job? But they did. Now, we did have a roof that was damaged there, and of course, we were able to inspect it. We're thinking about $500,000 on the roof. And of course, once again, their facilities director and their staff did an amazing job. They went out to bid. They had the remediation of mold, they had bids all ready to go. So they're well on their way. I don't expect that we'll have to go back there. We are certainly prepared to pay them as well. We had a consultant go in there and again check the roof, and like I said, that'll be about a $500,000 reserve payment. Hyde County did not fare so well. The main island, Matamesquite, or main island, Matamesquite, we visited there. We met with their folks, and we do have roof damage to Matamesquite. Again, about a $500,000 estimate to their roof. As you know, and I know Superintendent Basnight is here, Ocracoke was totally devastated. And I know Mr. Basnett will be giving you a lot of detail there. But as far as where the public school insurance fund is concerned, we had 5 buildings that we insured there. We anticipate 3 of those buildings we will be paying a flood loss on. Now, of course, all of Ocracoke and the schools did purchase flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program, as they well should have, because that is in a flood zone. And the way our policy or our insurance contract responds and has responded over the years, we are excess over the National Flood Insurance Program. It's my understanding that all the adjusters, or most of the adjusters that represent the insurers from the National Flood Insurance, have been there. I fully anticipate they will be collecting all of their insured values for their primary insurance. And then the fund will come in and be excess over that. So for each of those 3 schools, we're anticipating about a $1.5 million loss. It's hard to really put a number on that because of the enormous task of just getting supplies on and off the island, but we're anticipating about 1.5. So in total, that's about a 4.5 million. The whole entire, again, to date, the whole entire reserve that I have on Dorian is about $6 million. Just to give you a real quick update on Florence, last year, about this same time, I was talking to you about over 200 claims. I told you we had about $60–70 million reserve. Well, I'm happy to say we have paid $35 million in Hurricane Florence. The Public School Insurance Fund has paid that money out. I still have about $15–20 million reserve. We are, of course, working still with the insureds to close the remainder of the claims. We've closed a lot. I mean, I had 200, we paid 35, so you can tell we have not been sitting around twiddling our thumbs for the last year, but we're well on our way to resolving all that. My goal is to have all of those claims paid within 6 to 8 months, and it's just taking a little bit of lag time because we're waiting on receipts from schools and all of that sort of thing. Hurricane Matthew, we talked about that last year as well. We had about a $13 million loss there, and we've closed all those claims. Thankfully, they're all done. So just to give you an idea of where the Public School Insurance Fund is with our reinsurance, we do buy reinsurance for catastrophic events. I do not anticipate that the fund will be tapping into any reinsurance for Dorian. We have to have a $10 million deductible, or we call it a self-insured retention. As I said, we've got about $6 million there. So unless we had a lot more claims, we won't be looking at reinsurance. Of course, with Florence, we have quickly tapped into the reinsurance, and I will tell you that the reinsurers and our broker, we have been working seamlessly through all of that. The reinsurers are very happy with the way we got out there, we inspected. Of course, we had a lot of consultants, we had a lot of folks on the boots or on the ground, and they're happy. So all of that money is flowing fairly well, and that's coming back to the fund to help us to restore our financial strength. And then Hurricane Matthew, we collected about $2 million from reinsurance. So with all of that said, we're good. I think we're in as good a shape as we can be. I hope we don't have another hurricane, but if we do, we're certainly prepared for it, and I don't have anything else to report. If anybody has questions, I'm very happy to talk about insurance. So just fire away.
Any questions from my colleagues?
Thank you, Eileen.
You
Thank
bet.
you,
Thank you.
Lynn, for stepping into Ben Matthews' role. You've been doing a great job, and we're very happy to have your leadership there over that section of DPI. The quick response that you all have put forth is very appreciated by schools across the state. Thank y'all.
You bet. I just want to say one more thing. Superintendent Basnett, I understand, first of all, let me tell you, he has been wonderful in helping us to get our staff and our consultants to and from the island. And my consultants have told me that he rides around in a little golf cart and he checks on everybody. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. But thank you, sir. You've been a really delight to me. Thank you all very much.
And with that, I'd love for Superintendent Basnett to please come up, and I'd like to turn over the report to you to give us an update on Hyde County Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Superintendent. I appreciate the opportunity to stand in front of you today. I do ride a golf cart. If you've been to Ocracoke, that's the only way to get around in Ocracoke. A car is a problem in Ocracoke, particularly right now. I do want to say this. Standing here in front of you today is extremely surreal. And if I become emotional at any point in time, I apologize. The life that I've watched go by me over the past month is nothing that I would ever wish on anyone. The community of Ocracoke is devastated, and I don't use that term lightly. I watched a former student's house be torn down yesterday because the value was gone. It's cheaper to tear it down than replace it. Nothing that I show you today, and I have lots of pictures for you. I want to show you sort of what the island looks like first, and then we're going to talk about the school, because both of those intersect on the campus at Ocracoke School. Nothing I show you today is going to touch the magnitude of what's going on Ocracoke Island. If this is not a disaster, I don't ever want to see one. This was a Category 1 hurricane that had a storm surge or sound flooding of about 7 feet in 2 hours. One of my teachers, brand new, just moved to Ocracoke and took over this year, asked the principal for the storm, so what do you think? Well, it's Category 1, a little bit of wind, we'll have some tide, everything will be fine. When her shed floated by her house, she swam next door to her neighbors. Thought that would be a good idea to get out of her house. Matthew was mentioned just a few minutes ago. Matthew was the storm they talked about on Ocracoke, but there was this 1944 storm that all the old timers would talk about. This exceeded anything that anyone remembers on Ocracoke Island by about 2 to 3 feet. You know, typically when we talk about storm surge, we worry about windows and doors and water coming in that, roofs blowing off, rainwater breaking windows so that the rain comes in and you have a lot of damage that way. That's not at all what happened. We took care of the school. We bagged everything. We put plastic around the projection systems. We covered all the electronics and the computers. And the water came up through the floor, not the doors or the ceilings or the windows. It entered the buildings. And I want to try to give you a picture of what Ocracoke looks like or has looked like over the past month. We've come a long way, and it's still not there. I do want to mention a couple people before I start. Dr. Harvey has been phenomenal in offering support from you and the state, and I do appreciate that. Swartz and Shaw and Brandon McPherson has been on call at a moment's notice. We text and call constantly with the magnitude of things that we're dealing with. The company that we brought in is Builder Services of North Carolina. They were there within 2 days of the storm. And also Dr. Womble and NCAT. We wouldn't be where we were today without, we call that the third leg of the tripod. And when we got the availability of NCAT to use, that completed what we were trying to do. So those people are huge, but so have so many people that have reached out to us to offer. So let me try to give you a quick picture of Ocracoke Island, if I could. I mentioned Hurricane Matthew. If you look on my left, there's some signs. One of the stores down there, they put up a sign for every flood level. The sign at the bottom of the hand railing is Matthew. Look up almost to the top of the picture at the hand railing. That's Dorian. That's what we were. That's the difference in the flood they experienced. This is a lobby that's elevated on one of the motels that's down there. If you see the tide line, it's at the bottom of the countertop. All of that has been completely taken out at this point. This is what Ocracoke has looked like for the past month. There was no point in the day that you could turn your head in any direction and not see or smell what was going on that island. This is people's lives. These are beds and furniture and clothing and appliances and walls and floors and everything else that would thigh deep to waist deep water would do when it enters a building. The day of the storm, my principal called me. The eye had just gone by, and she was walking her dog, and everything was fine. And she said, we've had a little wind, but I think everything's good. Great, just calling to check on you. She called me about 2 hours later, and the backside of the storm had gone by, and the floodwaters had rolled in. And all she could say was, "Oh, my Lord." I told her I'd be down there the next day. We had a RISA meeting the previous month of August, and Builder Services had presented to us. And I'm sitting there in the meeting at the time, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's great. Hope never use them. I called Rick Stiett, who had come to the meeting that day, and I said, I need help. And he said, what do you need? I said, I need that company. Can they meet me at Swan Quarter to get on the ferry Saturday morning? So we got on the Swan Quarter ferry. In constant contact with the principal, she had let me know everything that was going on. I thought I was ready. I was nowhere near ready when I got off that ferry. Any description she had given me, any photo she had sent, did not touch what I saw that day. These piles on the side of the road stayed there for about 2 weeks before emergency management could even get to a point to start moving it. In the top photo, you see cars on either side of the road. That was people trying to get their cars to the highest point of the island. All the cars you see were flooded out. My staff, my student body, and the people of Ocracoke Island lost their homes, all their cars, their businesses, and everything that they called normal. When you drove down the back road behind the school, that's the top right photo, you were like driving down a hallway. The piles of people's lives were about 10 to 15 feet high on either side of the road, and they have to get them to the side of the road to be picked up. You saw everything. People have cried, got angry, sat down, quit, got back up and started again. Our students from school went out the day after the hurricane, walking around their neighborhood. What can I do to help? How can I help you? And that question, how can I help you? At times hurts because you don't know the answer. I have taken a crash course in disasters, something I've never experienced in my life, never trained for. To add to that, being on an island, when all of this came down, you normally, and I, in the past, any other place, the school gets damaged, they go to the next school in the county, find another adjacent school in the county. The closest school in our county is Madam Mesquite School from Ocracoke. It's a 2.5 or 2 hour and 45-minute ferry ride. Everything came on the table. We immediately thought of Hatteras, even with the damage. Can we get our kids to Hatteras? Well, the south dock on Ocracoke Island to get to Hatteras was damaged and the road is gone. Still, we're hoping to have that back in mid-November. The ride to Hatteras on a ferry would be 2 hours and 30 minutes. So even though that was on the table, getting our students off the island to try to get them to a school was not even an option. The 2 cars you see up there at the top were actually parked in the highest lot on the island, which is down near the ferry dock. I would say there were 100 or so cars parked in that lot. They were in the middle of the lot. That is way off the side of the lot, and one is sitting on top of the other one. This, if you could stand there beside this pile of debris since they've started picking it up, and that's not all of it, look up at the top right corner. There's a little yellow dot up there in the back. That's a backhoe. It's dwarfed by people's lives that have been picked up off the streets. And every time they go down a road and pick up something, by that afternoon, the street's full again. So here's Ocracoke School. We arrived Saturday morning, my maintenance director, myself, and 2 representatives from Builder Services to look at the condition of the school. This is what we believe. This goes right along with the goals that you've set. We are committed always to doing what's best for students. And you'll see that in this presentation because that was our focus to get started. We believe in the growth mindset. Folks, if there's such thing as a growth mindset, it has been exemplified for the past month on Ocracoke Island. Nobody has stopped. It's hurt, but they didn't quit. One of the things that we've run into repeatedly, I mentioned this a while ago, is people say, what can we do? What can we send you? Well, when you live on an island, there are no storage facilities. Every single building has flood damage. Some of the buildings now have no floors or walls. If people send you things, you have no place to put them. So getting school supplies in for students was useless. They would be ruined by the time we got around to using them. There was a tractor trailer. There were 9 tractor trailers full of materials that had been sent in by emergency management on the airport runway. One of those tractor trailers, even after it had all been used, was full of Clorox, bleach. The entire trailer. It was almost a hazmat situation because there was no place to put the stuff. There were roughly 1,000 homes with meters on Ocracoke Island. 400 of those meters were pulled because they had seawater in them on the side of houses. Those people were without power and still are. We only have one building on our campus that has power currently. We personalize our instruction. Well, when you start talking about what somebody needs, when they need it, how they need it, that's what our past month has looked like. We just held professional development for our staff this past Monday. It was about resiliency because they needed it. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a doctorate. But I've seen PTSD in faces every day. And it's daunting. School means everything in every community. You know that. The community, intersects at the school. On Ocracoke Island, it could not be any more significant to this community. We needed to have that school to start to get this community back to reality because their reality is nothing like ours, not standing here today. We had staff members, some that evacuated. I've heard that. There's a couple things I've heard that hurt. People said, we were lucky that it brushed by us. Folks, it hit us in the face. There was no brush by at Ocracoke. We had staff, people should have evacuated. They did. As a matter of fact, we had staff members that evacuated Ocracoke Island that after the storm on Friday could not get back to the island until Tuesday. When we were in our building on Saturday morning, the humidity level was 89% in our elementary school building the day after the storm. Now imagine what those homes looked like with mold by Tuesday when those people got back to their homes. That's our staff members. And now I have to look them in the face and say, we're going to go back to school. So we had to balance that. Where do we start moving forward, but at the same time allowing them to do the things they needed to do to try to get some of their lives back? How do you tell kids to deal with something that adults can't deal with? And those are some of the things that we have had discussions on in trying to get Ocracoke School back to its usable form. So here's what we did. We took 2 fronts. When we first walk up, of course, you look at the buildings and you think we're out of school and the buildings are devastated. What do you do? And everything is rolled into one big envelope. So we separated those. Principal Leslie Cole and I, who has been my right hand through this whole thing, sat down and said, we're going to separate this. We're going to break it into 1, get the kids back in school. 2, fix the buildings. It was obvious we were not going to be able to use our campus to do that. So we immediately start looking for locations. Everything's on the table. Any building that was not flooded out, we had people from the community coming to us say, you can use my conference room. There was a daycare that had been closed for a couple years on Ocracoke Island that when we crawled under the building, the water got within 6 feet of the floor, but didn't go in the building. So that became an option. The upstairs of our elementary school didn't have flood damage, but the downstairs had about a foot in it. So the upstairs became an option. It was just how to get there. And then, like I said, we hoped to get a classroom or two in NCAT. One of the local churches said we could use our Sunday school. But when NCAT came forward and said you can have our building, that meant everything, because then we could keep the whole middle school together and we could keep the high school together. We went virtual with our kids, and Beaufort Community College started sending their broadcast classes. Instead of an information highway room, which is what they did, we begged them to develop the technology to send that signal to each laptop that those students had at home if they had internet access. They did it. First time they'd ever done that, and it worked. So now we got to work on internet access. So we start calling companies and saying, we need hotspots. We need to be able to get our kids online. All of these pieces, I've said 1,000 times, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, because that's what it's been sometimes. You want to move, but you can't move that way because that roadblock is in the way. So everything was considered. Where we were going to transport our kids were considered. Where we could do it on the island was considered. Giving our families and our staff time to deal with all that kind of stuff. Who's leaving? How many kids are going to leave Ocracoke Island to go to school somewhere else? Right now, I think we've had about 11. I think we'll get all but maybe 4 of those back. Or are we going to lose staff members? That became part of our equation in our discussion. We started immediately with our buildings, with our muck and mold mitigation. We have adhered to FEMA regulations, thanks to Swartz and Shaw and Brandon McPherson keeping us in line on that. You need to do it this way. In the event we ever get a FEMA declaration, which we have not at this point, it has not been declared a federal disaster area. I don't know why. But we're adhering to those regulations. So when and if they happen, we've already got that base covered. How much was lost? That's the big thing. People contact us in social media and call us and say, what do you need? And the answer is, I don't know. Because you don't know what you've lost and what you haven't. I know I walked in buildings and saw technology that had a water line on it about 12 inches off the floor. I know that's not usable. But how many books did you lose? Whose computers were at home? Whose Chromebooks were at home on the floor? Our principal's Chromebook, brand new, in the safe in her office, underwater. Our modem that we use for our bus that we could have used to log several kids at a time, in the safe, underwater. And those kind of things keep coming up. What can you replace? What should you replace? What should you not replace? Where's the money going to come from to do that? I was very happy to hear you've got lots of money. And I appreciate that greatly. We're going to talk. But that's the kind of, and what kind of money are you talking about? They don't teach you this in school. Where do you start? And then keeping everybody informed at the same time. The community, my board, the commissioners, DPI. That all becomes, my phone doesn't stop. It's either a text or a phone call, and it's at least every 3 to 5 minutes. So we walk in the front door of our school. This is the day after. You can clearly see the tide line right inside the front door. It was about 12 inches consistently throughout every building, and our buildings are elevated. So if you factor that 7 feet, we're about 4 feet in the air. We got about a little over a foot in the water in the buildings. I had a carpentry shop and our maintenance shop, which you'll see in a minute, that had over 40 inches of water in the building. Knocked the garage doors right off the outsides of the building. This is Saturday morning when we walked in. The water was still standing. This is our elementary school. You can see that rug up there at the top. The week before this storm, I was standing in this room watching kids sit on that rug, and their teacher was reading to them. And they were happy and smiling, and the lights were on. And when I walked in this building that Saturday morning, it's dark, there's no power, and the water is splashing under your feet. That's our hallways. Again, on the right-hand side, that's our information highway. That's where the technology comes into the building. That's our gym floor that was recently replaced. It was a pond. On the right side is a mobile classroom unit. It was so damaged, we're not even going to touch it. This is the main power room for a third of our campus. The tide line is halfway up the 800 amp breakers. All of that's got to come out. Every one of those power lines have to be traced to make sure there's no salt in those lines, because if there is, when you power the buildings, they'll catch fire. When they first turned the power back on Tuesday night after the storm on the island, there were 3 fires. One of those was where the tree limbs had rubbed on the lines, overhead lines, and just rubbed a hole in them, and it caught the tree on fire. The other ones were your meters on the sides of your house. This is my carpentry shop. That's a meter stick, a 39-inch meter stick over there on the left, and the tide line is an inch above that. Table saws, everything was under. That's the garage door that it knocked off, one of the 2. This is our maintenance shop. That huge garage door laying there was knocked off of that frame and was sitting inside the maintenance shop. The water in the maintenance shop was about chest deep to me. So when people say, what do you need? How do you answer that question? This is the exterior of the building. We lost a section of the gym area. That's a transformer that snapped off, the pole snapped off, was laying on the ground. Our outdoor basketball court will now become our gym. That's where our basketball team is going to practice, and we will have athletics at Ocracoke. We are actually we'll have a lot of road games. No home games, but we're going to have athletics. We've got our soccer teams traveling last week. They went to first Hatteras and Manio, and we're also going to travel today and tomorrow, trying to do 2 games at a time so that they can go and come back. This is our commons. This is the oldest part of Ocracoke School. It goes back to about 1974. It was a one-room schoolhouse. The walls you see on the left are the interior walls they've added to break them into classrooms. The walls on the right are the original walls. I just signed off on that floor from the storm 2 years ago in July. Just replaced it. I'll show it to you in a minute. Our information highway room's on your right. See, things were covered. The little box to the left of that covered television is the air dryer. On the left side is our media center, which also serves as the library for Ocracoke. This is where the fun started. They began ripping out walls. Each of the buildings has underpinning under it. Fiberglass insulation soaks up water. Blown insulation holds water. So as we started ripping the floors out, we kept finding water, and it wouldn't stop coming. So we had to go under the buildings and tear the underpinning out, and it was like a waterfall. That's that floor you just looked at a while ago. We've lost all the floors, cut the walls up 4 feet. We're at the process now of assessing where we are on our floor joists, what can be salvaged. The boards under the floor were so bad when we were ripping the plywood up 2 days ago, the 2x8s were snapping as we pulled the plywood up. That's the downstairs of our elementary school that we'll be using the upstairs. We've recreated the stairwells in that building to have access upstairs and closed off the rest of the building downstairs so they can continue working there, but we'll have access to the elementary school. That's the material that came out of the building that was damaged or destroyed. It was about 50 yards long, 20 or 30 yards wide, and about 15 feet high. All of it's been inventoried, all of it's been photographed. So somewhere I'm going to get a 3-ring binder with about 1,400 pages in it of photographs and stuff that we've lost. That's what they tell me. Now we're at a point that we're drying. Everything has to be sprayed to kill the mold in the building, and then they super dry it. They raise it to about 135 degrees inside the building to dry it. And this is This is our high school wing right outside the information highway room. So here's our plan. We went to the daycare, which is on the left, and we're going to put our pre-K, our kindergarten, our first grade in the daycare. I just got a great report last night. We did air quality tests on each of the sites we'll be using. Both the daycare and the NCAP building came back clean, so we're able to use those now. The elementary school building we did early on, and that came back clean, so we were already cleared to use that. Our second, third, fourth, and fifth grades will be upstairs in our elementary school on the campus, and they've got access to their playground. All of that has been sprayed down to kill any mold or anything else that may have been floating in the floodwaters on the playground. And then NCAT will be our 6th through 12th grades. We've got the